I have found my prize. I have managed to find little Hosana, who's having a nice rest in the shade at the moment. So he's just sitting in one of the mitre drains off this main road. So we've decided to loop back because we couldn't find any tracks coming out on the cut line. And obviously what had happened is he had just been watching us and then slowly kind of came back out once we left. So it was good just to double back and just check again. So nice to find him. And he's, as you can see, a sleepy cat, as per normal with Hosana. He seems to be, at the moment, having a lots of lounging time, although I suppose he was up and down with his kill and has walked a little bit during the night, but he seems as though he's very sleepy at the moment. Now, the thing is that unfortunately for Hosana, is that he's about to get absolutely obliterated by the morning sunshine, because the sun is rising quickly and the shade that he is lying in is not going to last much longer at all. Is definitely going to get a situation where the sun is going to start receding or start getting up higher, and that shade is going to recede, and you're going to get a situation where he's going to be able to, well, going to get very hot, and then it'll be interesting to see where he goes from there, because he's kind of been weaving in and out on the southern boundary, going north-south, north-south, and so I wonder if he's either going to head north or maybe he's going to go back down into Little Gari. Either way, though, it's good to see him, and like I said, good to catch up with our young boy. After all, it's a situation where we haven't been seeing him much on Djuma at all, so every time he's on Djuma I get quite excited about this whole thing and always very happy to see him. Now, you can see that he's sleepy because his belly is still fairly full. I mean, he didn't eat most of yesterday, but they're still quite round in the tummy, so he's got a nice full tummy and doesn't really need to worry too much about moving around this morning. I surmise, though, that he is going to go towards maybe a pan that is off to our eastern side, on the southern side of Chitwa, and on the northern side of Chitwa, southern side of Gari Main. So maybe that's where he'll be this afternoon. Right, well, let's sit with him and wait and see when the sun gets onto him. But while we do that, I believe James has got another spotty creature. Well, he's still fast asleep at the moment. He's not in any way interested in being around and moving too much just yet, but you can see the sun is now starting to hit him on the face, and so soon it's going to get far too warm for him to be lying right out in the open, and then he'll probably stand up and try and find himself another shady spot. Knowing him, it'll probably be in the shade of one of the cars, because, well, you know how he is. He's often a very relaxed individual. For those of you who don't know who he is and have just joined us, he's a young male leopard that is very, very, very close to the hearts of most of those that, well, a lot of viewers as well as all the staff that work here, because he was born just under 2 years ago, and he was born to a female that was incredibly famous, and she was a female that really was quite incredible in the way that she was able to raise cubs, and her success rate with cubs was probably the best out of any leopard that I've seen in any area. And so she managed to have a lot of different cubs, and this was her last litter, and unfortunately she then disappeared when he and his sister were about a year old. Since then, he's taken to kind of adult life fairly well, considering that he was only just a year when he was abandoned or when he was orphaned. And he's then kind of gone on his own, and he's managed to find all kinds of food items and things to survive in the beginning. And now he's become an incredible hunter. He's able to kill pretty much anything these days. We see him with adult impalas. We've seen him with all kinds of different things. And so he's taken to life really, really good. The other thing about him is that he's an interesting character, in that he'll spend a lot of time with other leopards, which is unusual, because most of the time a young male leopard approaching either a dominant male or a female that's got different cubs generally is not very tolerant of that individual. But yet with him, he seems to somehow be able to get away with it, and he kind of plonks himself down next to all kinds of different leopards. And so the interactions that we've seen with him have been something phenomenal. So he's an amazing little cat, and one that, like I say, everybody is very fond of. He's got a very curious nature, and he's an individual that has provided many hours of entertainment for us. So I'm always happy when we can find him and see him and see what he gets up to. Like I say, for now he's going to be sleepy, but you'll see that he'll wake up soon enough. The sun is already getting quite warm, and given that he's lying right out in the open like he is, I'm pretty sure that he is going to start waking up at some point and then trying to find some sort of shade. I don't think he's going to move far, but there definitely will be shade. You can see where our vehicle shade kind of ends there. You can see Dave. Dave, you can wave there if you want to. There's Dave waving next to Hosana. And so you might find he'll stand up and just kind of saunter a few steps and then just plop down next to us, knowing that we'll still provide shade for a little bit longer. So definitely don't think he's going to be down all morning. You can see he's already kind of, his head is starting to move. You might see a bit of yawning before he stands up, even maybe a bit of rolling around. They often do that when they're kind of starting to get warm. They kind of roll just to try and find a position that's a little bit better. Right, now I'm going to sit here and enjoy Hosana and his relaxed demeanor, but something James Henry has found also has spots, but is not necessarily that relaxed and can be quite painful if it gets you. He is going the wrong way, and he's also lay back down again, so even though he did go into Little Gari, at least we can still see him. I don't know what he's up to. He's almost being like a little sheep, and he's just grazing all the grass around there and also having a bit of a grooming session. But he's found himself a much better spot to lie in, nice and shady and comfortable inside there, so it's a far better place for a leopard. It's also a lot more camouflage for him to use should anything else start to move into this area. You can see he's kind of got his nose up and sort of looking around. I wonder if maybe there isn't something moving in the distance that he was interested in. Nope, he's decided to go back to grooming again. Such is the way that he is. He'll kind of groom himself quite a bit, and also you'll find after they've been lying down like that, it's often the case is that they do a lot of grooming just to try and kind of get rid of any sort of parasites that he picked up walking through the grass, or any sort of loose fur that he might have gotten by rolling around on the ground. So you will hear also a number of cars driving around us, and that's because there are vehicles that are joining the sighting, and so there is a lot of noise at this stage. Hopefully everything will all settle down fairly quickly, and that we'll have a situation where it will be a little quieter once again. You can see Hosana just takes it in his stride there. He's not too fussed by the fact that there are vehicles around. He's fairly unperturbed by the fact that they are here. So, but I think that's where he's going to spend the rest of his afternoon or his morning. Is he's, like I say, found himself the perfect little spot. It's nice and shady, and like I say, it's protected by grass all the way around him. So he should have shade there for quite some time. He won't just lose the shade quickly this morning. There's going to be a lot of shade all the way around that little area. You can see there's a fallen over tree as well, and quite thick on his left side, which is where the sun is coming from. So I think he's chosen very well, little Hosana. You've put yourself in a very good spot, and I'm pretty sure he's going to thoroughly enjoy having a good nap inside that nice, cool, long green grass. You can imagine with a little bit of moisture that's on the grass how cool it must be to lie down in that area as opposed to being in the hot sun like he was a little earlier. Hopefully he continues his movement, though, to the east, and by this afternoon he's then on Chitwa. That would be the ideal situation, because otherwise I don't think we will see him this afternoon. If he goes any further south, then he's going to be into Little Gari, and that will be the end of it for us, unfortunately. We won't be able to follow him any further. Joshua, you're wondering how long I think Hosana and Tamba will be around Djuma until the older males stop tolerating them. Difficult to say. It depends on what happens with these older males. Oh, goodness, there he goes. Sleep time. It depends on what happens with the older males. So it depends on how Tingana goes. If Tingana manages to stay alive and to be sort of a animal that can kind of carry on dominating, then I probably would imagine not too much longer. Maybe in the next 6 months or so, both of them are going to probably catch a bit of a wake-up call, particularly Hosana, because he's getting quite big now, and he scent marks and he does all kinds of other things, and so I would imagine that he would be an individual that might just maybe sort of get chased off. But what could also happen is Tingana might get ousted by, somebody else, or get pushed out, and that then allows these two to just fly under the radar a little longer, and they're able to kind of stick around. Or Tingana, just because he's getting older, just is comfortable with the two of them as young as they are, that they're not really a threat to him at the moment, and he just allows them to stay, and we could see them still here in a year's time, which would be quite phenomenal. I'm secretly hoping that that's what happens, is Tingana just kind of feels like, well, they're here, I'm not going to worry about them, and they're not posing any threat at the moment, and then by then they'll have grown big enough and strong enough, particularly Hosana, to maybe then even challenge and to then stay in this area. That would be a first prize for me, was then we'd still be able to follow Hosana around in this section. Ultimately, though, we do want both of them to move out for the simple reason that genetically they are so closely related to most of the females in this area that it would be better if these young boys then pushed away and spread the genes somewhere else, because you must remember that the females that are around this eastern block are Shadow, Tundi, and Kuchava. Now, Kuchava is Tandi's daughter, and Shadow and Tandi are related to Hosana. They basically his older sisters, should I say. And then Tandi is obviously related to Kuchava, that's her daughter, and so they would be mating with their step-daughter, if that makes sense, or something like that. Right, now there's another vehicle that's just leaving quickly, so we're going to probably also carry on and move off. Its visual at the moment is not really very good. So we're just back with Hosana, and like I say, he's right near where the dogs are. He's not even, I would say, 600 meters from where the dogs are, so he's very, very close, and he's just got his head buried in a bush at the moment, so he's not like he's unwell or anything. He's just sleepy, and his paw is in the bush, so it's a bit of a funny angle, but he's just having a really nice nap. And the reason why I came back to him now, I was going to kind of carry on because I wasn't quite sure where he was, but then I saw some impalas and waterbuck close by, so I thought, well, let's go and have a look and see if maybe Hosana, given that he is a little glutton and likes to eat a lot, might be having a look at those impalas and waterbuck and potentially maybe trying to stalk them. But alas, he is still very much in sleep mode. I don't think we're going to see too much action from our little prince this morning. I think he's going to be, unfortunately, fairly stationary. But like I say, this afternoon promises to be a really good one. With the dogs and him so close in proximity, you never know what's going to happen. Maybe the dogs run into this area and Hosana ends up in the marula tree that he's underneath at the moment. So it will be a good afternoon to come and spend time with both creatures, I think. And I don't think they're going to go anywhere given how hot it is. You might find Hosana might move just a little bit, especially if Ellie's come past again after yesterday. He was obviously chased around a bit. Interestingly enough, we weren't actually far away from where Hosana was last night, so we looked for him a lot. Yesterday afternoon, we were trying to find him all around Chelapan, and eventually I found his tracks this morning coming out right where Viam and I thought he might be. So we thought he would be around going towards sort of Treehouse Dam, and he went into that block and then he came back out again from there. So it was pretty much in the right place. We just, I think, finished a little early and that there wasn't enough time for him to actually wake up and start moving. And because he had a full belly yesterday, I didn't expect him to get up until probably well after dark, and then only start moving from there. And he didn't move far. If you actually look at where we found him this morning, it wasn't a long, long way that we went. It was fairly short distance that he kind of walked. He walked past Twin Dams, a little bit up Gowrie Main, and then we found him pretty much there. So it's not a long distance that he went last night, so who knows what time he actually got up from his first slumber where he was lying during the afternoon drive. But either way, it doesn't really matter. At least we found him today and didn't have to work too hard for it. Because at one point I thought he had gone off into Little Gowrie and that we wouldn't be able to see him. But what I was showing Dave is where we last saw his tracks going into Little Gowrie this morning. He obviously had turned around and come back because his tracks were then over the top of our tracks. So he was obviously just sitting watching us, and because we weren't paying enough attention, it was early in the morning maybe, we drove right past him, or because the bush is so dense and so thick, it also could have meant that's why we missed him and drove past. Shame, boy. Are you tired? I'm not surprised. It's very warm, and you do have had a busy couple of days, that's for sure. Proud Cat Mama, you want to know if leopards shed their fur like domestic cats? Well, yes, there's some fur that comes out regularly. If you find a place where a leopard has climbed a tree and lay down, you will find bits of their fur kind of on the tree there where they've been lying down. And even sometimes if you go and you lie, or we find where they've been laying on sand or a road, and the same with things like lions, is that you can actually find their fur where they've been lying and where they've been tossing and turning. And particularly if you're just coming out of winter and starting to go into summer, their coat thickens a bit in winter, and then you start to find little bits of fur where they've been lying in the summer months. So it's quite cool to actually see. I want to try and find a place next time the lions are around. We'll need to go and check where they've been lying around and see if we can find some of those fur or hairs. And the next time we find a leopard in a tree with a kill after a few days, in fact, maybe let's go where Hosana was, although he didn't sleep much in that tree. It wasn't a nice tree to sleep in, but we need to find a place where a leopard slept in the tree, and where maybe we can then find the hairs for that leopard up in the tree itself, which will be quite cool to see. But definitely there is a shortening of the coat in summer. The winter coat is a little longer, a little fluffier. You particularly see it in male lions. Their manes get a lot puffier in the winter. In summer they tend to kind of lose a little bit of it, just because probably from a heat point of view it's easier to have a thinner mane in the summer than it is in the winter. I certainly can vouch for that. It's been nice to have a haircut recently. Feels a lot more breezy around the ears than it did when I had longer hair in December, that's for sure. Right, so we probably are going to leave Hosana to have his little nap. Like I say, just wanted to see if he was stalking those impalas and waterbuck. We'll probably let him carry on with his nap and not disturb him any further. And while we do that, let's go back across to James, who's looking at something infinitely smaller, but still very impressive.